Charles Bronson was Hollywood's meanest tough guy, yet one man could drive him insane. It wasn't another action star. Critics didn't trash his films. Someone laughed at his biggest insecurity while filming The Dirty Dozen. The director believed it was a joke, but Bronson never forgot the humiliation. The animosity was so strong that he still talked about revenge 30 years later. Hollywood's worst feud is revealed. Charles Bronson was never meant to be famous. Charles Dennis Bukinski, the 11th of 15 children, was born in a destitute Pennsylvania coal mining village. Parents were Lithuanian immigrants who lived to survive. He wore his sister's outfit to school at 6 since they couldn't afford decent clothes. Without English, he spoke Lithuanian and Russian, making him feel like an outcast in his own nation. That harsh, silent strength in his films? Not an act, but who he had to be to survive. It grew worse when his father died. Bronson was 10. He went straight to the coal mines while other kids played or went to school. The labor was brutal, dark, dangerous, and suffocating. For $1 per ton, he lugged coal in tiny tunnels for 12 hours a day. Never gave up. He dug, pushed, and gave up his garments for his younger siblings. Despite all that, he graduated high school, becoming the first in his family. At 21, he joined the Army Air Forces during World War II to avoid the mines. He faced peril as a B-29 bomber gunner over Japan. On one mission, he was wounded and received a Purple Heart. Despite conflict, he felt life had improved. He once commented, "I never had it that good. I ate and slept well. It was luxurious compared to home." His service was questioned, but his documents were true. Bronson was involved. He had many occupations after the war until one unforeseen opportunity altered everything. He was recruited by a little theater to paint scenery, not play. Standing near the stage, something clicked. He started with tiny roles and showed innate talent. He wasn't showy. There was something about him. Soon, he shared a cramped New York apartment with struggling actor Jack Klugman. He left for Hollywood in 1949 to make it big. When Charles Bronson entered Hollywood in 1950, his face showed suffering. He didn't appear like a normal leading man, rough, worn, and sculpted by a difficult childhood. Casting directors failed to spot stars. They saw muscle, a stone face for villains, thugs, and henchmen, roles with no names or lines, just a punch or bullet to take. Not Charles Bronson yet. His real name was Charles Bukinski. He realized the name was too foreign during the McCarthy-era Red Panic. He changed it to Bronson, borrowing it from Paramount Studios' Bronson Gate. A little deed that saved him in a town that wanted all its stars to look, talk, and sound alike. In the early 1950s, Bronson appeared in many films. He played background thugs, nameless troops, and people you forget after watching. Even among stars, he was invisible. He didn't grin or chat much, but his presence was felt. You couldn't ignore him. His eyes said, "You don't know me yet, but you will." Drumbeat in 1954 was the breakthrough. In a western with Alan Ladd, Bronson played Captain Jack, a Modic warrior against the U.S. government. Based on genuine occurrences, Bronson became that man without too many words. He showed pride, pain, and fire in his countenance. One reviewer said he stole the film. Not just a compliment, it was a warning shot. Bronson finished as Thug number 2. That final jail cell scene revealed a side of him Hollywood had overlooked for too long. Sense humor. A human edge and genuine rhythm that no one expected. Drumbeat seated him at the adult table, and the audience noticed for the first time. 4 years later, Bronson got his name on the poster even bigger. It wasn't expensive to make Machine Gun Kelly. Bronson made it memorable despite its speed and cost. He played mobster George Kelly, frightened by his reputation, strong on the surface, scared on the inside, and Susan Cabot played his cruel lover, creating tension that crackled. One bank heist scene is narrated by Bronson's body language and steely glare. Critics went beyond liking it. Shocked. Gritty, raw, and authentic. Some whispered that he could carry a movie. Hollywood didn't listen. Not yet. Bronson remained in the shadows despite that excitement. He played man with a camera on TV and had supporting appearances in The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, and The Dirty Dozen. Always a sidekick. Never first. By his 40s, most actors would have given up on stardom. Bronson wasn't born to quit. Europe noticed him, but American studios didn't. He was a quiet, cool, and strong hero in France, Italy, and Germany. European directors liked his stillness, look, and tension without speaking. International audiences made him famous before his home country. It was difficult. Hollywood struggled with him for years. He was too ethnic, rude, and ugly. He quipped that he looked like a dynamited rock quarry, and producers agreed. So they kept casting him as someone else. Native Americans, Mexicans, Greeks, Italians. Someone who appeared foreign. But everything changed when John Sturges cast him as Bernardo O'Reilly in The Magnificent Seven. He was older than most breakout actors at 39, but this part provided him something unique. He played a thoughtful gunman who knew courage wasn't just about guns. He once informed rural youths that their fathers, who farmed the land daily without pay, were heroes. The film was a blockbuster in Europe due to its quiet power. It launched his worldwide career also. Bronson showed he could convey meaning through muscles. 3 years later, The Great Escape provided him another chance to prove his worth. He played claustrophobic soldier Danny. His audacious prison break required tunneling. Bronson's eyes showed real terror. After his father died, he worked in coal mines as a child. He experienced underground confinement. Raw dread gave the role weight. John Sturges cast him to show that even the strongest guy can be weak. The result was remarkable, especially in Europe. Bronson was already a silent icon. As his reputation grew, his personal life unraveled. Bronson fell for Jill Ireland during The Great Escape filming. The issue? She married his co-star and friend David McCallum. Bronson was open about his feelings. He stunned everyone by making a move after his mother's death and his marriage's breakdown. Caused rift. It affected his life too. Bronson and Ireland married in 1968 and lived together for over 20 years. She was his wife and co-star in over a dozen films. They became one of Hollywood's most famous movie couples in the 1970s, when Bronson became a household name in America. His toughness carried over to 1960s success. The Dirty Dozen, filmed in England. This star-studded war film had more ego than space. Bronson didn't help himself. His alone made him seem remote. He was known on set as Charlie Sunshine for his somber demeanor, but it wasn't simply attitude. Shooting was hard. Filming took months due to delays. He lost co-star Lee Marvin. He was drunk and had to be dragged back from a tavern, barely sober for the next scene. It was chaos. However, it became the biggest success of 1967, collecting millions and surpassing significant titles. Not every memory from that set was a win. Bronson was always height conscious. He was 5 feet 8 inches tall, and a group situation exposed his timidity. Bronson was placed between Clint Walker and Donald Sutherland, the set's tallest performers, by director Robert Aldrich for comic effect. It was humiliating and immediate. Everyone noticed. Bronson was outraged, but Aldrich chuckled. The event hit hard for a tough guy who spent years developing his image. It hurt, not just a prank. While beautiful performers starred, Charles Bronson played tough characters in the background. He starred in The Magnificent Seven and The Dirty Dozen, but Hollywood never gave him the lead. His rugged face and powerful presence were too much. Bronson waited as studios cast clean-cut heroes. By 1968, he was 47 and still no American leader. Like Clint Eastwood, he packed his things and went to Europe. The difference? Europe saw what Hollywood missed. Not being pretty didn't matter. They wanted grit, force, and presence. France called then. In Adieu l'Ami, European superstar Alain Delon particularly requested Bronson's contribution. Producers were blunt. Europe doesn't like attractive faces. They value character. That movie's theater debut was electric. Obsessed French viewers. The film grossed millions, giving Bronson his due. He and Delon had raw, fascinating chemistry. The box office and critics noticed. After then, fate offered Bronson another shot. Sergio Leone, maker of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, offered Bronson the role of a mystery harmonica-playing shooter in Once Upon a Time in the West. Bronson had rejected Leone's offer for a fistful of money, the job that established Eastwood, years earlier. Lion found his man, and it was worth the wait. The film burst across Europe. It lasted a year in Paris. In Italy, Germany, France, Bronson was everywhere. Lion considered Bronson his best actor. People couldn't look away from his silent stare and tense movements. Rider on the Rain followed. A dark French thriller that earned Bronson a Golden Globe and immortalized him. Hits continued. Cold Sweat, Violent City, and Red Sun suit Bronson's stoicism. He got custom screenplays from directors. They were more than roles. They displayed everything Hollywood disregarded. He played the same quiet, dangerous, moral man in every picture. Audiences enjoyed it. Women adored him. Guys wanted to be him. He was more than a face when he returned to Hollywood in the early 1970s. He was millionaire. He made $1 million per film by 1973, which was unheard of. Bronson's actual journey began at 52, when most performers fade. British director Michael Winner helped develop Bronson's memorable roles. Their various cinematic collaborations showed their compatibility. Bronson's chilling calm complemented Winner's raw violence. The violence escalated after Chateau's Land, their first project. They didn't plan Death Wish to be so terrible. Another director was in the running, but Winner didn't shy away from dark material. He maxed out the film. Bronson, always silent, symbolized vengeance. As for audiences, it delighted them. As critics decried the brutality, more people watched. Bronson redefined the hitman position in The Mechanic first. He played a silent killer who moved with terrifying accuracy. The picture opened with over 16 minutes of silence. Bronson intending to strike. No chatting, just tension. That performance demonstrated silence's power. The kill man and his apprentice had a gay relationship in the original script, which was darker. But studios removed that. But what remained was strong. Bronson elevated cold-blooded murder to art. He also obtained his wife, Jill Ireland, a role in the picture, as he did in many others. Bronson was versatile. After his wife was attacked, he played a part Apache in Chateau's Land for retribution. He was a tough officer chasing mafia killers in The Stone Killer, two very different personalities. Bronson made both convincing. Things weren't always easy off camera. A stunt went wrong and nearly killed a crew member, and the auto rental firm panicked and sought to return their cars mid-shoot. Michael Winner wasn't pleased. However, these two films established Bronson as the quiet avenger and brutal justice dealer. These roles shaped what followed. Next came the turning point. By the mid-1970s, Bronson was more than a cinematic star. He topped global box office sales. Larger than Eastwood. Larger than Paul Newman. Other celebs carefully edited their photos, while Bronson did not. Rather than interviewing or smiling for the press, he made movies and let quiet speak. Death Wish was a huge hit. It earned over 10 times its few $1 million cost. Studios finally recognized international renown may outweigh domestic press. And Bronson? Maintained his routine. He stared at the camera like he had nothing to prove. Bronson couldn't shake Death Wish's Paul Kersey persona. The murder of his wife and the abuse of his daughter tear apart his tranquil architect existence. He suddenly picked up a gun despite hating violence. Shocking change. The fact that Bronson was 52 added to the reality. He became what many secretly wanted to be. Cold, fearless, and unstoppable. Bronson had limits behind the scenes. He forbade his real wife from playing the victim. He told the director not to meddle with her. That was Bronson. Tough. But safeguarding. It ignited when Death Wish entered theaters. America struggled with increased crime and government distrust. Suddenly, this harsh street justice picture felt more than simply a movie. Critics labeled it dangerous, racist, and hateful. What about audiences? Nothing satisfied them. People left theaters wanting guns. Some shouted Death Wish. Bronson on the street looked like Paul Kersey. The actor-character line was blurring. Even the book's author was appalled. He wrote it as a warning, but the people praised Bronson. The 1970s New York streets were dark, full of terror, and trashy. People terrified to stroll alone, graffiti. Bronson entered that world with his stealthy gaze and hidden gun. Many saw the film as a reflection of their lives. Certain neighborhoods began calling themselves Kersey Patrols. The impact was deep. Law enforcement worried. People would try to enforce the law themselves? Bronson was more than a cinematic star. He symbolized That was nice or horrible depending on who you asked. Fame cost money. Bronson didn't like the spotlight or Kersey's transformation. He appeared exhausted in interviews. He felt stretched out and warped like a funhouse mirror. He painted and sculpted at home, but fans knew him as a killer. He liked peace and quiet. Bronson emotionally recoiled as Death Wish sequels became more overblown. He said he basically goes through the motions. He killed gangs with machine guns in Death Wish 3. Nothing felt genuine anymore. Even Bronson thought it was excessive. He kept playing the role. Money spoke. So did contracts. Bronson played Kersey from 1974 to 1994. Characters become more extreme with each picture. A damaged man with a gun became an urban soldier fighting crack traffickers and warlords. Charles Bronson's love tale begins beyond Hollywood's glamour. He met Harriet Tendler, a wealthy Philadelphia youngster, in an acting school while he was a penniless 26-year-old coal miner. His first date cash was 4 cents. Harriet noticed his rough, determined nature. They married in 1949 over her father's objections. She supported them for years as Bronson pursued his goal, waiting for a huge break that seemed never to arrive. It did eventually. The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape made him famous, but success was costly. Once founded on sacrifice and hope, their marriage crumbled. In 1965, when Bronson was near success, they split up. Not bitter, Harriet published an honest memoir about their relationship. She remembers him as a loving father, a skilled painter, and a relentless worker. Bronson also met an unexpected woman around the same time. On The Great Escape, Bronson reportedly declared, "I'm going to marry your wife," while Jill Ireland was visiting her husband, David McCallum. 5 years later, it happened whether he stated it or not. In 1967, Ireland divorced McCallum. Bronson divorced 2 years prior. Bronson married Ireland in 1968. McCallum later said he never nursed a grudge, rather than get angry. It was the start of a unique 20-year connection between Bronson and Ireland, spanning over a dozen films. Besides love, their relationship shaped Bronson's profession. Bronson cast Jill Ireland in most of his films from 1970 until 1987. Total, 15 films. They were true partners, not simply co-stars. While Bronson worked on his next project, they moved about. Still, they succeeded. With 7 children, 2 from Bronson, 3 from Ireland, and 2 they adopted, they lived a Hollywood glamour life with a peculiar, nomadic normalcy. Their main home was Bel Air, but they had a Vermont farmhouse and a Colorado winter home. Bronson worked while Jill raised horses. They developed a life without the gritty violence of movies. In private, Bronson was shy and couldn't watch his own movies. He was calm and loved drawing. Family feasts over red carpets. Despite being the world's highest-paid actor, he lived like a coal-dust and starving man. In one moment, Jill nailed his dualism. When she complained about a director mistreating her, Bronson calmly strolled over and physically shook the man's senses. His deep loyalty and protective edge made him who he was. Nothing could shield them from what followed. Jill got breast cancer in 1984. The actor who played violent vigilantes stood helpless by his wife. She bravely fought the sickness for 6 years. She testified before Congress, authored 2 memoirs, and spoke out. She inspired, not merely survived. She died at their Malibu house in 1990. Disaster struck Bronson. He cremated her, put her ashes in a walking cane, and carried it around for life. For movies and millions, she mattered most. Bronson's narrative took an unexpected turn. A British felon named Michael Gordon Peterson legally changed his name to Charles in 1987. Bronson. He allegedly did it for boxing promotion during a brief break. The irony? He had never watched a Bronson film. Still, the name stuck. After that, Peterson gained a terrible reputation. He became Britain's most dangerous prisoner for the next few decades. Peterson's tale accelerated. He bought a water gun, made it look like a weapon, and compelled a stranger to drive him across town after his release. He was linked with the Cray twins, boxed illegally, and robbed a jewelry store on New Year's Day. 6 days later, he was detained again. However, he was no longer Michael Peterson. Bronson was Charles. In the UK prison system, that Hollywood term symbolized anarchy and violence. How seriously Peterson took the act is odd. He was notorious for holding hostages, beating guards, protesting on rooftops, and demanding a helicopter in tea during one siege. He was most notorious for holding an art instructor hostage for 44 hours in 1999. The result? A life sentence. He has mostly been in solitary for years. Despite several parole hearings, he remains in prison, forever linked to someone he never met or saw on screen. The barrier between these lives blurred more in 2008. The low-budget picture Bronson starred Tom Hardy as the notorious British prisoner. Hardy gained weight for the job, met Peterson, and gave a scary performance that garnered praise. Though he saw the film years later, Peterson adored it. He said Hardy nailed him. The movie simply confused things. Many still confuse the prisoner with the actor, forgetting that one was a movie legend and the other a vicious felon. Strangely, Peterson wanted to distance himself from his famed name. He became Charles Salvador in 2014 to honor Salvador Dali. Bronson was vile. He stated, "I didn't like him." Even in prison, he tried to start afresh. The actor Charles Bronson remained silent throughout. He never commented on the odd identity theft. He may not have cared, or, being a very private man, he preferred silence to display. No matter how many headlines the British prisoner made, the real Charles Bronson had already left his imprint with a lifetime of outstanding films, strong loyalty, and a lasting love story.